Hey, core reporters, welcome back to my channel. You might be wondering why I look like I'm in a different place. It's because I'm on the ground right now. I took one of these like couch cushions and put it on the ground and said, you know what? I feel like sitting on the floor today. So guess what I'm gonna do? Sit on the floor, right? So let's get into a recap of what went down on this week's episode of Teen Mom Next Chapter. First of all, spoiler alert, right from the title, but Leah Messer calls up her dad at the behest of her sister, Victoria Messer. And the way her dad just went in on the LGBT community, right, was just really, really shocking and vile. Like you could tell that she was genuinely shocked by the way that he spoke about these innocent people who have literally nothing to do with the fact that he is a crackhead whose own kids don't like him, right? Like wild. We'll get to that later, but obviously we have to talk about that, right? So let's, speaking of Leah's sister, Victoria, let's start with her, okay? Because at the very top of the episode, Victoria lets us know that her baby daddy, Roya, has an interview coming up that would determine whether or not he would be able to have longer residency in the United States. Remember, the two of them have 3 kids together. They had one child initially, and it was a one-night stand child. Apparently, Victoria, the genius, she went to Costa Rica. She met this guy. He was like the kayak instructor or something like that. And then they decided to hook up. Nothing wrong with that. But the reason I'm calling her a genius is because according to Leah, according to Royer, she told this man that she literally didn't even know to take the condom off on a one-night stand, right? So anyway, they have that one-night stand baby. Then they got pregnant again with twins. So that's how they got 3 kids in so little time. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know. I hope this relationship works out, but I don't know. Now, Leah packs her bags to join them for the interview because she needs to support them in person as their sponsor. She's paying for this whole operation, so the sponsor needs to show up. Oh, Lord. God bless. Now, let's get into Cheyenne's family, shall we? It turns out that her daughter, Ryder, has been having sleeping issues. So she's always waking up in the middle of the night, waking them up, asking for things. For example, they show a clip of her asking them for water, and they'll be like, no, the water's already in your room. And she'd be like, but I can't see it. Oh my God. If I was having a good dream and a child popped up, my child talk about, I can't see the water that you laid out for me right next to my bed. And I'd be like, oh my God. Lord, I used to have sleeping issues when I was younger, but mine were more in the form of night terrors. I used to have a lot of nightmares when I was really, really young. Then when I got older, I'm talking 5th grade or something like that. What happened? Oh, the chain letters. Do you guys remember that? When you have MSN or Hotmail or something, your friends would be on MSN, you'd be like, what's your email? And then you give it to them. Or actually they already know because they have you on MSN. Then they'll send you these stupid chain letters about how you'll die if you don't send this to 20 other people. So I would send it, but I'm like, did I send it in enough time? Or is it the fact that I already read it enough? I had a rough bout with sleep, growing up. So I totally get it. Poor Ryder. And come to find out, she was actually trained to not be able to sleep through the night because guess what? She had to be woken up every 2 hours in her sleep to eat because of her VLCAD condition. So it's wow, that really, really sucks, right? In her whole life, this girl has never been able to sleep a full night. That's scary. I cannot fathom that as someone who loves her sleep. There's nothing like waking up and stretching and then hearing the crack of your old and decrepit spine when you wake up from a good nap, I love that. So God bless. I really hope that this works out. Now, let's get into Bar. Honestly, this guy frustrates me so much because he seems to have the potential to be a really good, contributing member of society, but it just seems like that is not his vibe, right? Remember, he was offered a deal to stay out of jail, and the deal was basically that he had to complete a certain amount of community service hours. And that's it. It's either do that or you go to jail for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Seems like a pretty easy enough deal. But this guy, he was just sitting around the house procrastinating. And he did ultimately end up finishing his community service hours in time. But the problem is that he didn't get it signed off. So after you complete these hours, you have to get it signed off to validate that you did do this. And so that's the new kind of threshold between him and freedom, right? And I've never seen someone so committed to effing up and going to jail. Like, it's just wild to me. And then he complains to Ashley that the lady who needs to sign up on the paperwork is taking her sweet time with it. Like, she's not prioritizing it. And I'm like, good. Because you know what? Your emergencies, your failure to plan are not her problem. She does not need to rush herself, reorganize like her kind of like train of doing things in order to prioritize you. You had so much time to do this. You've got no job. Like, what was holding him up from doing this like immediately? You know what I mean? Like, he's got literally nothing to do. And he chose to do this last minute. So too bad, so sad. Let her take her sweet time. Like, if she gets to you in time, good. If she doesn't, too bad, right? Who cares? Now, I ask this every time, but Ashley is such a bad mama jama. Is it a bad mama jama or bad mama jama? I don't know. But she's really like, she's just really beautiful and just like, she seems really ambitious. I know she's got like her issues, but she seems like such an ambitious, smart person. So I don't understand why she is so stuck on this man. I just can't imagine being attracted to this. Like, I feel like Bar really drags down her life. And I want more for her, like relationship wise. And like, honestly, girls, like, please don't settle for a Bar in your life. Like, especially if you're like, you know, a really ambitious girl. Like, this is just not good. You need better. Like, find your equal, right? Now, let's get to Jade. Oh God, here comes Eeyore. Oh Lord. And I call her Eeyore because she just always comes along with this cloud over her head and a really sad storyline. So in this week's storyline, she was calling around and she managed to secure some good rehab for her parents. And so like the parents agree to go, and her mom, Big Gulp, shows up to the house and she's talking about how like they have to be in separate rehabs because partners, spouses, whatever, are not allowed to be in the same. Not my kneecap. Look at me getting fast on YouTube. Next thing you know, I'll be on OnlyFans. So she's like, oh, like partners, spouses, whatever, can't be in the same rehab, so blah, blah, blah. And she seems excited about it. And then Jade, sometimes I feel like she low-key is looking to stir shit up, right? She's like, are you going to take it seriously? Like, it's not the question, it's the way she asks the question that just comes across very patronizing. That would piss me off. You know what I mean? So of course the mom gets defensive because the question was designed to get you to become very defensive. So Big Gulp, she's like, listen, I refused to go to rehab all these other times because I was not ready to. The reason that I am going this time is because I am committed to making it work. And then Eeyore starts talking about how all of this like chaos and drama of, you know, the parents being crackheads, her husband being a crackhead has been too much for her. You know, she's running around, getting everybody into rehab, paying for everybody's rehab, and it's just too much. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I'm sorry, but at a certain point, it's a choice. You chose to stay with a man who had an addiction problem, right? You could have very easily shown him the door. And wasn't he cheating on you and leaving condoms in the kitchen trash? Right? Like, weren't you calling the cops on him? You had a choice. Stay with this or leave and be alone. Like, it's way better than this, right? Or find better, whatever you want to do. And then when it comes to the parents, cut them off or keep dealing with their BS, right? Like, but she chooses to keep having these sorts of people around her. So I do have very limited sympathy for her, to be honest with you, at this point in her life. And so it turns out that Jade was the one who was calling all these rehab places for these people to go. And I'm like, Jade, you answered your own question. They're not serious if they're not the ones calling themselves. So why are you calling for them? And then on top of that, you're probably paying for them too. So what are they doing then at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Like, these are not your children. You only have one child, and her name is Chloe, spelled in a very, very unfortunate way. So stop acting like your parents and Sean are your children as well. Now, next up, we get a scene of Brianna's armpit. Apparently, she's got some kind of biopsy. She got some kind of biopsy because she found a lump under her armpit. And yeah, they're hoping it's not breast cancer, obviously, but the results come back and all they say is that they found a bacteria, but they're not able to identify what bacteria it is. And obviously, this is something that stresses out Roxanne because remember, Brianna has lupus, which means that her immune system already is quite compromised. So like all of this stuff is just a lot. Like, it could lead to really hardcore lupus flare-ups and whatnot, which is not something that Brianna needs in her life as a single mother. So good luck to her. I hope that it is nothing to be concerned about. Now we go back to West Virginia, where it turns out that Royer got approved for residency after that interview. Good for him. And then the sister's like, oh, well, now that that's out of the way, I've got a favor to ask you. So I thought she's going to ask for more money, right? But no, it turns out that she wants Leah to call up their father. And it's like, listen, Leah has been telling you for a long time, Victoria, that she wants nothing to do with your father. Your father has traumatized her. She's got lifelong daddy issues as a result of this man not stepping up and being a father for her. So why do you want her to speak to this man who has traumatized her and left her feeling so bad about herself and left her making such terrible decisions in her life as a result of this like kind of hole he left in her heart? Why do you want her to call and speak to him as a favor to you? She's like, oh, well, he's trying to get into rehab. And like, you know a lot more about rehab than I do, which low key kind of slapped. It's true. So Leah's like, all right, fine. I'll try to reach out to this man who I do not like. And let me tell you something, you guys. I'm going to take this off because this is very sincere. And I think it's because I was talking about this today earlier with my friend. I went out to lunch with like my friend. She's like this American girl that I actually met through one of you guys. So we've been friends ever since I moved here like 3 years ago. So 3.5 years now. So we went out to lunch and we've just been talking about how like Paris is so amazing, but like it's just, we don't have much space. Like everyone here, we live in like small 1-bedroom apartments, like 300 of, you know, if you're in Europe, 35 meters square is considered big. That's the size of apartments she and I have. But like people typically live in smaller than that. You know what I mean? And then, you know, it's not that sunny. So we're just talking about like maybe, you know, having like more space and like moving. And then we get to Leah. This is the first time, okay? The first time ever that I look at one of these girls' house or anything and go, wow, I'm jealous. Like I've seen so many beautiful houses. Like for example, Cheyenne's house is absolutely stunning, but I don't look at it and go, wow, I'm jealous. But we get to Leah's podcasting studio. And we all know how many podcast episodes has Leah put out of that podcast? Like 4 in a year. Like she puts nothing out, but she has this full-blown studio with lights, mics, a mixer, like everything, you know. And I'm here on the floor. You know, and then if I'm not on the floor, I'm on my kitchen counter recording. Like I would kill to have this space, to have a studio like that. And how many videos have I put out? Almost 3,000. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, it's not fair. I need space. I need space. This is crazy. Like that was the first time where I was like, oh no, I need that. You know what I mean? Ugh, so freaking jealous. So anyway, she goes to her podcast studio to call her father, and this is where things get buck wild, right? Now, her dad, for some reason, like she's talking to him about rehab, and then he's just demanding to see her children, aka his grandkids. And it's like, well, you've barely even seen this girl her whole life. So why are you jumping to the grandkids, to her kids, before you've ever really even spent time with her? Right? So Leah very obviously, and I like the way that she put those boundaries real firm. She said, no, it's all well and good that you want to have us as your motivation, but it's not the time for you to be around my kids. I don't want this sort of like, you know, energy, behavior, whatever around my kids. So for now, no, complete your rehab, then we'll talk. Right? So good for her on that front. I really like the way that she kind of like held her own hair there. And so she starts talking to him about like going to rehab places, right? Like in all these different places. And so California comes up. California comes up. California love. And so the dad complains about the idea of going to rehab in California because there's too many F words. And, you know, I got to be honest with you. I'm surprised that queer was bleeped out because I thought it was like an okay word. Because, you know, I've got a lot of friends being here in Paris that are in the rainbow community, right? Like, and like if they're queer, they're just, you know, I'm queer, I'm this, I'm that. So I hear this word all the time in a very positive aspect. Even when I went to Pride, even when I go to Pride, I go every year here. So I was really surprised that it was bleeped out. Okay. So I don't mean any harm in saying it, but like here it's a very positive, like normal word to use. But anyway, he was using it in a derogatory way. So he said the F words and the queers. And then he goes into this kind of like ramble about how the Lord made male and female. And I'm like, dude, you are a cracked out man who doesn't even have a relationship with his own kids. You didn't raise those kids. Another man, talking about what the Lord made, another man raised your children, right? They don't even like you. And you're worried about what like these people are doing with their lives? Like, are you serious? The man, and Leah, she was like, dude, like, I don't think you've ever even been to California. And I'm like, why stop at California? I am pretty sure that Leah's dad has not been like anywhere. Has he left the state? Does he have a passport? Has he been anywhere other than like an underpass? Like his entire life? You know what I mean? Like this guy has not gone anywhere and he's just worried about these people. And I'm like, it is just so wild to me. And it is so typical. David Eason is another example of just someone being so hateful, but having nothing going for them in life. You know, it's like, these people are not contributing members to society in any way, shape, or form. In any way. I cannot think of a single way in which society benefits from these people. You know what I mean? Like just nothing. But they have the nerve to be hateful towards like other people just because of who they are. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I start thinking of my friends, right? And I'm like, the one that I just went to go visit in Tunisia, he's like an engineer. He's like not a chemical, it's like an online engineer. He's like VP of engineering. His boyfriend's a doctor. Then my other one's here, like he's like got 2 PhDs. He was helping with like, not fixing, but resolving or whatever, helping with like research for COVID here in France. His boyfriend is a professor of German, French, and Spanish language, I'm like, and then Leah's dad could barely just speak English, right? And then I've got so many more. Another one's an architect. I'm like thinking of all these wonderful people who are just positive, nice, open, and contribute so much to society that are hated by Leah's crackhead dad who literally does nothing with his life, right? Like he doesn't even have a relationship with his children. His children are traumatized by him and he hates these people. I'm like, wow, like how absolutely revolting and disgusting. And so Leah was like, you know what? I am getting off the phone with you. That is wholly inappropriate and just wow. Like I'm not engaging with this. And I said, you know what? Good for you, girl, because I can't stand that ignorant stuff. My God. Let's move on to more pop. This is why I really like Cheyenne's family, because Cheyenne's storylines are always so nice and positive and peppy. It's nice to see people living good lives and getting along well, right? So what happens? So she and Zach create this like kind of like, challenge, sleep through the night, and then you can like pick something out of this like box of prizes, and it works. Ryder actually winds up not bothering them throughout the night. So she does ultimately end up waking at about 10 p.m. to take a sip of water. And then she goes back to sleep. I got a question for you guys. How do you feel about there being cameras in the children's bedrooms? I've never thought about it before this, but I'm like, I don't know if I like that. Something about it feels very creepy. Just, I don't know. I don't love it, but I do want to know what you guys think, because I think about it like, when you have security cameras in places, like, for example, I don't know if you like rent a place or whatever, any Airbnb or something, like laws are that you can have cameras anywhere but the bedrooms, because that's just like a very like private space. So like the idea that we've got cameras in children's bedrooms doesn't sit that right with me, but I digress. So Cheyenne and Zach are very happy that they finally get to sleep through a full night. And I'm like, you know what? I'm happy for you too. And thank you so much for being my palate cleanser, because guess what? I got to go back into the trauma dumping. So let's go. It's time for Eeyore. So Big Gulp's rehab facility calls Jade to let her know that with all the detoxing from all the alcohol that Big Gulp had in her system, and probably Big Gulps too, right? She has lost a lot of weight because she had a lot of like water retention and whatnot going on as a result of that. And so they ask how Jade's doing, and Jade talks about how like she feels like she needs to be the pillar of strength for everybody in her life. And they say, well, why don't you go to Al-Anon? Because I think that could be quite helpful for you to help you understand and guide you through managing your own feelings, like in regards to all of these addicts around you, right? And so she ultimately, I don't know, they don't tell us, but from the previews for the upcoming episodes, I think she ultimately ends up going to Al-Anon, which I think is going to be a really good thing for her. Now, next up, Leah decides to have a conversation with her sister she confronts her sister about the conversation she had with her dad and his hateful heart. And I'm sorry, but her sister like is still being delusional. Like, some people you could see, like, not to be rude, but you can see stupid in people's eyes sometimes. So her sister, I'm not going to say it. Maybe you guys are going to say it, but I'm not going to say it. Actually, I'll say it. You can see some of that in her eyes. So she's like, Leah's like telling her like this serious stuff that the dad said. She's like, wow. And she's like, I'm cutting him off because I just don't agree with that. And so she's like, wow, well, maybe I'm just more hopeful than you. Maybe I'm just, and she just keeps doing this. And I'm like, are you okay? Like it was just so weird. And so she just keeps talking about how like she has this dream that her dad is gonna like, be a good dad to her one day. And it's just, oh my God, like I think she's like I think she's in Brianna. Actually, I think I can confirm at this point that Victoria is in Brianna's like category of dumb, which I describe as being clinically dumb, because, and you know why I can confirm, because look at this picture. She told a man that she didn't know in a random country to take the condom off. That she met him like a couple of hours prior. She's like, come bang me, take the condom off, whatever you've got. I want, and Lord knows what it is that you've got, but I want it. Oh my God. So Leah says that she lost all respect for her dad after the phone call and that she's officially washed her hands of him. And I say, good for you. And I would do the same. I don't like hateful people, to be honest with you. I think, progress is difficult for a lot of people. And I get that there's certain like things and people are grappling with and this, that, and the other. But then when you just claim to hate everybody, it's like, oh God. And especially when you look at your life, you know what I mean? Like, oh, come on. So anyway, Bar. Oh God. Speaking of, oh God, oh, come on. Here comes Bar. Let me put his photo up. Bar and his eyebrows, they go to something, like they're backstage about to go to like the courtroom to figure out if he is going to jail or if they're going to accept his community service hours that he logged. And the producer, Larry, talks to him and asks him questions about like what he's gonna like do or feel like if he ultimately has to go to jail. Like, how does he feel about the idea of not being able to see his daughter for several years, missing out on her childhood? And then that's when Bar starts crying about potentially missing Holly's entire childhood. Wow. But I don't feel bad for him. You know what I did? I decided that I was going to have oatmeal for dinner. And I liked it. Because you know what? Bar had so many chances to stay out of jail. Easy chances. And he knew what the stakes were. And he knew that he would miss out on his daughter's childhood if he did not shape up and act right. And he chose to act wrong. So guess what? More almond milk, more crunching. I don't care. Anyway, you guys, that does it. Another recap of what went down on this week's episode of Teen Mom Next Chapter. As usual, I'm more excited to hear what you have to say about everything. So please make sure to leave all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below and we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.